So guys, what's going on? Guys, I've had someone message me on my Instagram. And he said to me that, Imran, Errol Spence wants the fight with Canelo Alvarez more than he wants with Terence Crawford. He wants to fight Canelo Alvarez. He's talking more about Canelo Alvarez than he is Bud Crawford. Do you agree with that? I don't agree with that. But it's obvious why he would be doing that, right? It's obvious. Now, you might fight Terence Crawford and you might make, what, $10, $12 million? Right? A fight between Canelo Alvarez and Errol Spence might make Errol Spence $25 million. So it's probably double the purse. Yes, the Canelo Alvarez fight is a lot more dangerous fight because Canelo could really hurt Spence. He's a lot bigger, a lot stronger. And for me, I believe Canelo would knock Spence out. However, you've got to see Errol Spence is a fighter. Errol Spence isn't a civilian. Errol Spence ain't looking at Canelo, oh, he's bigger than me, he's stronger than me. Errol Spence has actually said that I'm the same size as Canelo. I'm as big as Canelo. I don't see it that way. Canelo's went up to light heavyweight and knocked out a light heavyweight. So I don't believe Spence would have knocked out a light heavyweight. But I see where, Spence is coming from. He's a big welterweight. Big welterweight don't mean you're a big middleweight or even a good sized middleweight. However, you've got to understand why he would want the fight with Canelo Alvarez more than he wants Terence Crawford. Now, I'm not a big fan of a guy that's not even cleaned out his own weight division because Errol Spence hasn't fought a lot of guys yet. He still hasn't fought Danny Garcia. He still hasn't fought Keith Thurman. He still hasn't fought Manny Pacquiao. He still hasn't fought Terence Crawford. So these are 4 names, and he's about to fight Danny Garcia. But even then, after, if he beats Danny Garcia, there's still 3 big names in the welterweight division. Let's not forget Keith Thurman beat Danny and Sean Porter, the guys that Errol Spence fought. These are 3 big names that he hasn't fought. And in my opinion, I don't think he should be leaving the 147 division unless he fights those guys. But matter of fact is the fight with Canelo makes him more money than probably any of those fights. Pacquiao would make him, but I don't even think Pacquiao makes him that kind of money. The money that he would get to fight Canelo. So, if I'm totally honest with you, I don't blame him wanting to fight Canelo. It makes a lot of sense, actually. It makes a lot of sense for him to fight Canelo financially. Because what you've got to understand is, right, if he fights all those 3 guys and loses to one of them, which is a possibility, he could lose to Crawford, he may lose to Pacquiao, may lose to Thurman, you don't know. Right? They're all quality fighters. Then the Canelo Alvarez fight goes down the drain. Right? Do you understand where I'm coming from? So, I understand why Errol Spence is looking to fight Canelo because he knows that this welterweight division is stacked. And listen, I'm not saying Errol Spence is very confident. He probably beats all of the 147 guys. But he also knows there's some tough fights there. And he knows a Canelo fight could make him serious, serious money. It's either that or he's struggling to make weight. It's either that or Errol Spence can no longer make welterweight and he needs to move up. A lot of people have been saying Errol Spence seems drained. So he needs to move up weight. That may be the case. Maybe Errol Spence is struggling to make weight and that's why he wants to fight Canelo. Because at 154, who's he really going to fight now? Jermell Charlo is in his camp. He's not going to fight Jermell Charlo, right? The other guys at 154, who is there really out there that's going to make him be a big fight? Nobody. There isn't a big fight. There isn't a big fight at 154 apart from Jermell, and that's not going to happen. They're very close and they're under the same trainer, so that's not going to happen. So at 160, so at 154, there's no one really for Errol Spence to fight for that big fight. So the only fight that makes sense for Errol Spence is at 160 against Canelo. Now, Canelo's happily going to take that fight with Errol Spence because Errol Spence is a big name. He's a lot bigger name than Jermall Charlo. He's a lot bigger name than most of the 160s and 168s that he's going to get in the ring with. So Canelo will happily fight Errol Spence in a super fight, in a fight where he's going to go in against a smaller man that he's going to be favored to win and stop Spence, right? He'll happily take that fight, in my opinion. Because for him, it will be a super fight. It'll be a big payday, right? And it'll be a fight where he'll be quite a big favorite to win because of the size. So I don't blame Canelo wanting to entertain, because he did say he'd love to fight Spence, but the weight might be an issue. Canelo would definitely fight Errol Spence at 160. He would come down to fight that fight at 160. Listen, if Errol Spence is willing to make 160, Canelo will make 160. I believe Canelo's not a big super middleweight. He's not a light heavyweight. He's not even a big middleweight, really. He may have filled out into the middleweight division. I can see Canelo coming back down to 160 if the right fights are there. 100%. Canelo is going to jump between the weight classes from 160 to 175. He will jump. When there's a right fight for him, he'll even fight at 175. I wouldn't be shocked if Canelo fights Beterbiev in the future. That might be a video. That might be another video for some other time. But I won't be surprised if Canelo fights Beterbiev eventually, because there is pressure from the fans for him to fight Beterbiev. So I think Canelo's going to take on all challenges from 160 to 175. I believe so. I believe now that he's a free agent, he could pick anybody, and he's going to pick who he wants. So I think we're going to have some real fun over the next couple of years now. Now that Canelo's a free agent, he's going to be picking from 160 to 175. And if Errol Spence is willing to move up to 160, then I'm very sure Canelo would entertain that fight, because, like I said, I think Errol Spence would probably be a bigger name than anybody from 160 to 175 right now. I can't think of one name that I think would make Canelo more money or a bigger fight apart from the Golovkin fight. And we've already seen that twice. So Errol Spence may be the second biggest guy that Canelo can face, apart from Golovkin. And who knows, it may even do out Errol Spence. If Errol Spence can beat Crawford and beat everybody at 147, then that becomes a monster fight. Do you see where I'm coming from? So I do think that fight between him and Canelo is a huge fight. And of course, Canelo's going to want to entertain that. It's obvious. It's not, who wouldn't want to entertain that fight? It's a big fight. It's a big fight. So to be honest with you, I personally, I first would like Errol Spence to concentrate on the 147-pound division. Hopefully he can clean that out. Hopefully he can beat all of the guys. Or if he loses, then he loses. But if he can clean it out, then he probably deserves a fight with Canelo. But I just think when you've got so much unfinished business at your weight, the only way you would say it's okay if he can't make the weight anymore, and it's hindering him like it was Kell Brook to make the weight. I think then is the only time you could say, well, Errol Spence should move up because he's struggling to make 147. So then you can understand. But if he moves up because he just wants to move up for fighting Canelo for the sake of it, then I don't think that's the right move, because I think there's too many fights in the 147-pound division that, there's too many answers in the, too many questions in the 147-pound division that need to be answered. And until they all fight each other, we don't know. First, you need to clean out your division before you start jumping up 2 weight classes, And that's how I feel about this Spence-Canelo fight. I think Spence is a very, very good fighter. I've always rated Spence. Everybody that's been following my channel knows how much of a Spence fan I am. It's just that I think this Canelo talk is a bit too soon right now. If this was when Errol Spence had beaten everybody in the 147-pound division, and he was now in his last fight against Crawford, and if he beats Crawford, then he fights Canelo, then fair enough. But I do think, and a lot of people said, well, Errol Spence is just using the Canelo talk to promote his fight. I don't think so. I believe Errol Spence is actually serious about fighting Canelo. And he has been serious for a very long time. Because he mentioned this years ago. Before he was even champion, he mentioned that he wants to fight Canelo. So, to be honest with you, I don't think he's using this to promote. I think he genuinely wants to fight Canelo. And you genuinely will see him, because here's the thing: if Errol Spence thinks he's big enough, strong enough to hang in there with Canelo, then he knows it's a big payday as well Financially, you have to look at that fight as a huge payday. Canelo pays, Danny Jacobs got what, 10 to $15 million for that fight? And Danny Jacobs is nowhere near the name that Spence is. We know that Spence got paid that kind of money to fight Mikey, I believe. So what would he get against Canelo? So this is what you got to realize. Spence knows how big that fight is financially as well. So, and Spence probably feels he could go in there and hang with Canelo, because Spence is like I said, he's a big dude himself. He's a big welterweight. But I would favor Canelo in that fight by stoppage as well. But listen, if Errol Spence takes the fight, you got to give him respect. He's daring to be great. But firstly, I think when guys do that, I think they should clean out their own division. This is what Kell Brook did against Golovkin. Kell Brook was a good welterweight when he was fighting in the welterweight division when he was champion, but he didn't even fight the top welterweights at that point, and he decided to move up 2 weight classes to fight Golovkin. That was a crazy move. Crazy move when you haven't even fought the top guys in your welterweight division. And Keith Thurman said that. He goes that you haven't even fought a puncher at 147 and you're going to fight a puncher at 160. How does that make sense? And he was right. He was bang on. You haven't even fought a big puncher at 147, but yet you're going to fight a puncher at 160. It's the truth. And to be fair, I think Spence, it's not the fact that he hasn't fought a puncher. It's just the fact that, for me, he hasn't cleaned out the division. He's fought some good names. He's building up a resume, but he hasn't cleaned out the welterweight division yet. And when he cleans it out, then I think a fight with him and Canelo would be a natural monster fight. But let's see what happens. Listen, I'm a big fan of Spence. I'm a big fan of Canelo. So if that fight was to happen, we'll all be excited. But again, you do think to yourself and you scratch your head and think that, is the weight going to be too much here? Is the weight going to be just too much for Errol Spence to make up? Because here's again, I think Errol Spence is a great fighter. And I think Canelo Alvarez is an exceptional great fighter as well. But like they say, a good big man beats a good little man. And people may say, well, Errol Spence isn't a little man. Yet he is in size. Just because Errol Spence might be an inch taller, that doesn't mean anything. Errol Spence isn't as big and as strong as Canelo. He hasn't got the punching power of Canelo. Canelo has serious punching power, that can affect middleweights, that can knock out light heavyweights. Errol Spence, even at welterweight, is a good puncher. He's not a huge knockout artist, Just look at his fights. He's not a huge knockout artist. Kell Brook got worn down. Mikey Garcia went the distance. Porter went the distance. This isn't a huge puncher. Canelo Alvarez is a big puncher at his weight. And when he's fighting a welterweight, he's definitely going to be a fearsome puncher. So I think it's a tough fight for Errol Spence. But credit to him if he wants to take on the challenge, wants dare to be great. But what do you guys think? Leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think. Guys, make sure to hit the like button. It really helps the algorithm. It really helps the channel. So smash that like button. And guys, remember to please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.